Blog Talk Radio.
This is the Donelson File, Tom Donelson and Coco Konski, as part of the Bachelor Pad Radio Network. And that was the top of the hour news. And Coco, how are you doing?
Hey, everything's going okay.
Yes. Well, I just want to, like I say, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Tom Donelson with Coco Konski. I'm the chairman of America's PAC, head of America's Majority. I'm a project director of America's Majority Foundation, the author of 8 books, and Coco.
Right. Well, my name's Coco. I'm a writer for Medium. I produce, I work in film, and I co-host the show every Tuesday, Wednesdays, and whenever else they need us.
All right now we're waiting for Lauren Buys, our European correspondent. She's having some difficulties calling in. This is occasionally we do have this happen when we deal with with her, and this is not the broadcast network. This is simply for some reason. Sometimes it's difficult for her to call in from Ireland for whatever reason. So we're just waiting for her. In the meantime, we will kind of, no, you got anything? I'm going to kind of talk about my week very briefly. So far, it's been a really crazy week. I got some, been working on some projects, and then I have a daughter. We're still trying to figure out when we want to leave here to move her to Reno. I've got eventually a business meeting sometime in Chicago, and then at the end of the month, I'm off to New York for a week. I'll be with my youngest. So this is basically, it's what you call chaos here at the Donelson. And how about yourself? What's going on with you?
What is going on with myself? Not a whole lot. I have been looking for apartments to move into, so that's been taking quite a bit of time for me. Other than that, I really have not been up to much. Other than writing and any other sort of thing like that. It's just been kind of hectic, actually. So I've been doing a lot of different stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Also on the line, just we're going to get to Gary Gray. He's going to so as soon as we hear from Lauren, we'll switch over. But I am going to go ahead and put on Gary Gray, who's nice enough to join us. Gary joined us about a week ago. Gary, how's it going?
Okay. We need to stop this gun violence.
Hey, Gary, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I have to ask you guys a serious question.
Sure.
We are spending almost $2 million on medical bills from these guns. $2 billion in the past 3 years. This is unacceptable. What do you say?
Okay, Coco, what do you think? I'll let you go first.
So as far as sending $2 billion as to where?
We are spending medical costs of these gun incidents.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing, I was talking about this yesterday and how I believe, certain guns should be regulated, and if you're going to own a gun, you should not be owning an AK. You should not be owning, an assault rifle or anything like that. If you're going to use it for protection, a handgun will do just fine, and I think, with everything that's been going on with all the shootings and all, you know, the massacres that's been going on. You know, when are people going to wake up and realize that, you know, enough is enough?
Well, let me say this. Until the Congress acts, now, Democrats, Republicans, don't see eye to eye. I get that. But you have to have common sense gun laws. And we don't have it right now. We have none of that right now.
Okay, and let me give a couple of my comments, because we talked about it also yesterday. And we had a pretty good conversation yesterday on this, and here's the interesting thing. I mean, this is a point, that was made yesterday, and, we talked about the word common sense of offense. Okay, let's understand two things. Number one, this is a constitutional right. It's not something to be dismissed out of hand. And number two, how do you define common sense gun control? For example, we talked about the red flag, doing what Coco's talked about, namely, keeping those individuals who, for whatever reason, shouldn't have guns, which we discussed. But, everybody, our guest who studied this, he did admit that, there's that fine line between making sure that you have due process to ensure that those people being denied or given that, do have their rights of due process. And it's not a simple, black and white issue, because there are that question of constitutional right. Even when you use the red flag, how do you determine whether or not that individual is or isn't? How do you go through the courts? What are the due process so that, that individual rights are respected, while at the same time making sure the society is respected? And so it was not necessarily, again, in black and white. It's a very interesting conversation we had yesterday that is worth listening to one more time. I don't know, Gary, if you had a chance, but if you can get back on our, on our podcast, we had a pretty good conversation along those lines. Coco.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gary.
Now, when we go to a theater, there's an unwritten rule that you can't yell fire in a theater, right? Is that correct? You cannot yell fire in a theater. Why is that? Because it's a safety hazard. Okay? It's the same thing. You have guns. Now we're dealing with safety issues. What happened in Gilroy, there's no reason for that in Gilroy. The guy went through the fence with his armament and started shooting. You can't have this. The guy in El Paso drove 6 hours to get there. Then he went to eat lunch, went back and got armor and started shooting. That's premeditated. Both of those are premeditated. So where is he getting it from? Where is he getting the motivation to do what he's doing? Now, I know I heard you a couple times, and the blame goes directly to the White House. Because if you keep saying stuff over and over again, people listen to what you say. Words are a very powerful thing. If you keep repeating the words, somebody listens and does a reaction. That's where we are right now.
All right. Okay, I'm going to make a couple comments. Okay. First of all, number one, when does the shooter take the responsibility, the killer? Because there are a lot of people out there who don't go gun crazy because whatever President Trump or somebody else says. An example, what inspired the gentleman in Dayton, Ohio? Because he was not. He was a man of the left. And again, there's enough evidence to demonstrate this guy has some significant problems. But do you blame Elizabeth Warren? Do you blame Alexandra Cortez? These are people that he stated on his social media that he's in love with. And certainly Alexandra Cortez, about a week ago,
how much?
wait a minute, Gary. No, she indicated on a show in New York, that it is okay on occasion, even in, it was a discussion dealing with the Middle East, but she basically made it clear that even in the U.S., certain people had a right to use violence to get what she said, social justice. So, I mean, the point comes into play is this. I'm not going to blame Cortez or Elizabeth Warren for this any more than one can blame. I mean, if we're going to play that game of Trump is the reason why they're trying to stop people, then you have to sit back and say Elizabeth Warren doesn't oppose.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
As a African American, as a Native American, right, there are laws on the books. And we're on the books, right? That discriminate against both of these entities. And this guy in the White House who continues to say the people of Islam are terrorists, okay? You can't do that.
Well,
because if you keep saying that, you got no disregard for everybody in Islam, which is wrong.
I tell you what, we're going to hold on to a second here, Gary. I'm going to have you keep on the line. Our Lauren Bies, the official European correspondent, will introduce her shortly after these words. From the Bachelor Pad Radio Network. This is Tom Donelson and Coco Konski. We're going to have Lauren Bies on the air on the Donelson Files, and we have Gary on the line as well, and he has his own program. So obviously we got a lot of great superstar guests tonight, but right now we're going to listen to this promo.
If you want to hear another view of the latest developments in Trump's Washington, listen to the Dr. Larry Show. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Dr. Larry is a former businessman, entrepreneur, college president, and author who provides background and context for current events and trends in politics, education, foreign policy, and religion from a conservative perspective. Tune in and hear the other side as Dr. Larry talks with Washington insiders exclusively on blogtalkradio.com and the podcast at thebachelorpadnetwork.com.
That's right. Dr. Larry's going to be following with this show, and he will be continuing the discussion that we had last night on the Democratic debate and also the recent murders in El Paso and Dayton. And now we're going to introduce our official European correspondent, Lauren Bies. Lauren, welcome. And before you do, let me, Lauren's been in Europe getting an additional studies, in a master's degree, but she is so much of everything else. She is a creative content writer. She's been a journalist, an executive producer, and she was a director of development and outreach for women's playwrights. And if I skipped anything, Lauren, go ahead and add.
Thank you. I think you kind of wrapped it up right there. Basically, I've been in theater and I've been in film, but I've also done a lot with communications. I've studied journalism and also public relations, and I'm interested in people in general. So I have a very diverse background. I've also spent a number of years in the corporate field. So overall, being in the arts, I have a lot of interaction with individuals and people, and being out here in Dublin, Ireland, I'm privy to speak to a lot of people in the international community. And I'm very happy to be with all of you this evening because of the fact that I have had a chance, since I've been here now for a year, to engage with so many people in a diversified community, and they're very open with me to discuss their opinions. Just as soon as they hear me speak and they say, oh, they assume I'm a Canadian, and because I'm friendly, and I say, no, I'm American, and they immediately engage and want to know, oh, why is this happening in your country, or whatever the current event is. So
Right.
I have had a very unique experience. What's happening now as far as the gun violence, let's just put things in perspective, okay? And Gary, hello, by the way. I'm Lauren. I think we need to this is how I would like to offer a little unique perspective, okay? If we take the individuals in question, I'm not talking about the shooters, I'm not even talking about Donald Trump or any of the other individuals in question, any other political people. Let's put things in perspective. As human beings, we are born, and after that, what happens to us is based on our environment. How we are influenced is how we are shaped. Except for certain biological influences, that is the nature of our being. You put an individual, you put a beast, an animal in a certain condition, and they will react a certain way. If over a certain period of time, they are constantly exposed to a certain type of stimulus, they will react in a certain manner of function. These shooters have a certain mindset at this moment of our climate, in our history. You put a certain weapon in their hands, and they will act out in that manner. And that's what's happening in our country. Now, I think that's a reasonable statement, what I just said. Now, anybody, please comment on that.
Okay, Coco.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing, I said this a million times, and how it's just really sad at how we have to label it today's massacre. Not just shooting, but today's shooting. And, I don't think we really have been doing that in the past, 30 years up until now. Mm-hmm. And, we look at other countries, and yes, they have, misfortunes of stabbings and whatnot. But it's nothing compared to how America handles, their school shootings. I mean, you walk into Home Depot right now and you can get a bulletproof backpack for $250, which is insane to me. Mm-hmm. You really want to send your kids to school right now?
No, and let's. What's really unbelievable that I didn't understand growing up in America all my life? We are really conditioned to think that this is normal, and it's
right.
not. And now that I'm out here, and Coco, because you were raised in Europe,
right?
But I didn't
right.
know this, and the average person here living here, this is what they say. They say, it's stupid. How stupid can you people be there? How dumb. Now this is a cross section of the educated, the so-called blue-collar workers. Everybody says the same thing. How stupid can you Americans be to be doing this? It's just dumb.
Well, let me put
I agree.
Let me throw this in, because here's the problem I run into. Because if you look at Europe, and you look at the data in Europe, and you look at the statistical analysis of mass murders, you've had numerous mass murders over the past 15 years in Europe as well. And if you look at the actual numbers, they're very comparable to what we're seeing here in the U.S. So I don't see
No, Tom, don't go there. Don't go there.
Right.
We know that's not right. That's not right, Tom.
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh,
okay, I'll give an example. Oh, yes, I'm looking right here. Here, for example, in 2015, France had more mass murders,
Okay,
as defined by the FBI, than let's say.
But wait, that's different. That's different because you're talking terrorism. That's different. You're not talking about. That's different though. You're talking terrorism. They did. France. That's an isolated thing. That was terroristic. They were. That was a targeted country, and you know that. That's different.
No, is it really different? I mean, here's the thing that comes into play, because this is what we're. No, wait a minute, listen. Because if we're going to label, and that's what we're labeling,
wait, this as
an act of terrorism, because you have two. Yeah, no, we have two acts of terrorism sitting right here. In Dayton and in El Paso, that's what they're being defined as.
Well,
to sit back and make the argument that it's only terrorism, so we don't count it in Europe versus the United States. That's not a. You can't. That's kind of like trying to have it both ways. I mean, both continents are suffering from exactly that phenomenon. It's not necessarily U.S. You're seeing an increase of terrorism throughout the Western throughout the Western world, Europe and the United States.
Yes, but isn't it interesting how the United States knows that it's in our country, but because we like to have that type of terrorism, the United States right now, in the administration, likes that white supremacy. We're kind of like that. So we're not going to label it as such. But Europe has been fighting that type of terrorism for a long time. So you tell me how we can have it both ways. Explain that to me.
Well, first of all, number one, I mean, there have been enough discussions to label this as terrorism. We just got finished doing exactly that. So I'm not exactly sure.
No. This administration literally took it off their website.
Well, I'm going to just put it this way. It just got labeled. I mean, you basically just had it labeled. I mean, this is what we've been labeling it. And if you look at the FBI data, they don't whitewash it. They listed it. If you look at, let's say, Mother Jones, who's got enough data, they've listed it for the years. We got enough database to say, these are acts of terrorism. We've discussed this on this particular program when I've made it very clear, along with others, these are acts of terrorism. Domestic terrorism.
But we all know the first year of this administration where they were listing the white supremacists and their acts of violence, they took that off the White House administration website. It was deleted. Why was that done?
Well, I might put it this way. I can just say in 2017, 18, and 19, I don't remember any aspect of anybody saying that these were not acts of terrorism. And whether or not, I have no idea what the White House in 2017, I have to go look that up. I'm just simply saying they were listed as acts of terrorism. I don't remember hearing anybody saying anything but that. But my point was going to be this is not necessarily a United States thing, but there are aspects that is cross into Europe, into the Western side of the equation. What you see in New Zealand just a while back, getting hit with an act of terrorism. It is becoming a worldwide phenomenon that is existing there. It's not necessarily a U.S. thing anymore. We can't, and the point I would say, the label is simply as that.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
May I ask you a question? This I genuinely want to know. What is it about our country besides our Constitution saying that we have the right to bear arms? What is it about our country that when we have these horrific shootings, we don't take a step to do anything to stop the next one, whereas other countries will do something?
Well, okay, I'm going to give you the same argument that last week, and I know Gary Gray's on the line because I gave him the same argument as well. And you guys can decide because I got enough data to back it up, and you guys can use your data. But if the answer to your question would be A, in the United States, we do have a constitutional right to own guns. And it's not necessarily a right of the militia per se, but it's been treated. If you look at Heller and McDonald's court decision, they went back and depended upon the research of people of Joyce Malcolm, who is by one of the leading scholars in this area, to look at the history within the English-speaking side of the equation. That indeed, there is an individual right to own guns. Number two, number two, and this is the other problem we run into, we're talking about not even 1% of the total murders in the United States, much in the same way in the United States. And the reality is, what gun laws are going to be effective that fits the constitutional side of the equation? And the answer is, you would be hard-pressed to sit back. We had an assault weapon arm ban in the 90s. One of the reasons why it was left, that they did not renew it, because there was no significant evidence that indeed it did anything. And people have to remember one aspect.
Yes, it did. It went down 40%. It went down 40%. It went down 40%.
No, but here's the thing. Gun, the statistical analysis, because one of the statistics, one of the data has always been more guns equal more crime. But yet in the United States, from the mid-'90s all the way to the present, we not only tripled the number of guns, but murder rates overall have gone down. Overall compared to the 90s. So it doesn't necessarily. There's not an apple to. You can't just sit back A and B. Now, okay,
I have
I'll let
a question
you.
for you. Wait, why do we need assault weapons? Why do we need assault weapons, rifles that could kill so many people round like that?
Yeah.
You really think back when we had the Constitution, we needed to defend? They were even knew we were going to have those types of weapons now?
No, I'm not going to make the judgment. I guess the question I would throw back to you: who is going to be the one determines who gets a gun and what gun? Let me ask you. So here's the other. I'll ask all three of you, and then I'm going to let all three of you comment on this. So Gary, get ready, because I'm going to put you on as well. Okay. For example, the question is, and I don't know, Coco has been on record saying, she's not for the elimination of weapons, but selective weapons, or what you would use, sensible gun control, and I'll let her define that at her meeting, but how she means it. But when I look at a law proposed, which basically eliminates 90% of the weapons in the United, which includes handguns. We're not just talking about AR-15. We're talking the most popularly bought handguns. Then the question is, the question that you have, my question to you is, okay, when do you draw that line? Because right now, what I'm not seeing on the other side is they're basically not saying the AR-15. They're saying a handgun. A handgun is on that assault weapon list. So that's and again, like I say, this is a constitutional right to defend oneself. I will. Okay, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to start off with Gary. I'm going to go to Coco, then I'm going to come back to you, Lauren.
Okay.
Okay.
Gary.
In 1972, the Black Panthers carried guns in the streets of Oakland. They went to Sacramento with those guns, open carry guns. The state of California changed the rules. Right? They banned open carry guns in California. Why? Because the Black Panthers were carrying out in the streets. Okay? So my question to you, Tom, why did California do that?
Yep.
See?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but I'm going to let Coco and Lauren go first. Okay, Coco? Okay, Lauren, go ahead. We may be having an issue with Coco. Go ahead.
Okay, that's fine. Well, first of all, in Ireland, to see police officers, they don't even carry guns. The police officers don't. You could be in the street, and the cops don't have a gun on them. They have a special unit in the event of a serious problem. Then they actually have guns that you see. So every day of my life, I don't see guns at all. If somebody if someone needs to have a gun, like a citizen, they could apply for a permit and like a rifle or something for hunting, and they have to wait a certain amount of days. They have to go through background checks. and then they could apply for a permit, and then they're able to have a rifle. So that they have certain procedures here, okay? Whether or not someone could actually have like a handgun, I don't know what that's like. I've never heard of anybody having one here, but I know that like for hunting and for things like for farms, and you're actually able to, you know, apply for one and have permits for things like that. But you don't even see a police officer here on the street ever have a gun. They just don't carry one. So I'm now living in a community where I don't ever see guns. And I'll tell you something, I never feel like I'm not protected. I always see police officers around me all the time. I always feel safe. I'm not afraid, ever. Now, that's big, because I lived in Colorado. In Colorado, I was surrounded by 3 military bases. I was surrounded by people that had guns all the time. I saw guns all the time. I went to a campus where girls carried those really cute little guns, and they were always pulling them out in the ladies' room, and they were always showing each other at bars, and everybody thought it was cool, and you were always nervous because everybody was drunk, and they were high, and they were taking out their little handguns all the time. And then they would be in their car, and they were showing that their dad took them to the rifle ranges on weekends after school, and they were pulling them out in their cars, and everything was cool because it was legal. And in 1 year, at the University of Colorado, 9 people committed suicide with their guns that their parents bought them for their birthdays. That's what I lived with in the United States. And I've been here for a year, and I feel very safe. I don't know what the answer is, and I say this in all sincerity, except for one thing. We are human beings, and we have to use our reason. We have to use our reason. And a lot of people are dying, and there has to be a reasonable way to take how we're dying in this world. And certain countries are having ways to do this. And when children are being killed and people are saying, let's get rid of a certain people because they have certain color on their skin, and people go and get guns and then shoot them for no good reason, the people that have a little common sense should make sure that doesn't happen. That's common sense. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Coco, are you back on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I'll let you, then I'm going to answer Gary's question, then we're going to take a break.
No, I agree with everything Lauren is saying. I don't have anything to add to that because she basically spoke for me.
Oh, thank you.
She spoke for me.
Oh,
she spoke for me.
And I missed you.
I miss you.
I do. You have to come here and visit, really.
Yes. No, definitely.
All right.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to answer Gary. And Gary, I'll answer your question, and then I'll let you respond back, and then we're going to go on a break. And then we're going to kind of change subject to a couple other subjects that we invited Lauren on as well, in addition to guns. You bring up a very interesting point, though. I do, because you're absolutely correct. In California, they did have gun control, and one of the rational reasons was it was directed at one of the reasons was directed at the Black Panthers. I'm going to agree with you that to me, if you're a law-abiding citizen, regardless of what group you belong or don't belong, until you prove otherwise, you have a right to own a gun. I would put it this way. For those people may not realize, but in the case of there were the two most famous gun cases, Teller and McDonald. McDonald was a black individual who sued the city of Chicago because he felt he needed a handgun because he had businesses in the city for his self-protection. It was a black man demanding his right to own a gun. And there have been and you can probably make the case that there have been history certainly in the Jim Crow era, when gun controls were enacted, it was enacted directly against blacks. So there is that historical record. And Gary, you bring up a very good point on that case. I'm going to let you finish this up, and then we're going to go on. And we're going to hit the promotion and then move on. So, Gary, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I think that America needs to re-examine itself as compared to this gun control stuff. We're losing too many valuable people, and it's time to act. And enough of the political games, enough of the NRA backdoor money going into funds. It's time to take action. It's time to save lives. Thank you, Tom, and have a good night.
But then, before you leave, Gary, tell everybody about your shows, where you write, everything about you. Because you have always when you come on the show, you add quite a bit, but you got your own history as a journalist. So let everybody know about you.
Well, I come from New Jersey. I'm a sports writer of Black Athletes Sport Network. I have a show every Saturday at 1 Pacific, 4 East. You can ever go. We deal with sports and politics every Saturday afternoon on blogtalkradio.com. Also, I write articles on BASNnewsroom.com. You can go check that out, too.
Thanks. Well, thank you very much, Gary, and you're always welcome back on the show. I thank you. Well, this is Tom Donelson. This is Tom Donelson and Coco Gonski, and our special guest, the official European correspondent, Lauren Buys, joining us. But right now, we have this message by yet another great program on the Bachelor Pad Network.
Hey, this is L.A. Bachelor reminding you, if you're looking for real discussion on sports, politics, religion, and other topics, you need to join us on Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern at WCOMFM.org, on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. at blogtalkradio.com/LA-Bachelor, and on Thursdays at the same web address. Follow us on Facebook at Pad Nation, on Twitter, Pad Nation, the number 2 at Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can email us with your requests, your comments, your concerns, anything you want at our email address at LABachelor with a T, BATCHELOR 40@gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Pad Nation, Instagram, and of course, if you miss any part of our broadcast, make sure you go to thebachelorpadnetwork.com and listen and enjoy the Bachelor Pad.
Yeah, thebachelorpadnetwork.com and also tunein.com. And Coco will tell you how to listen to us on iTunes.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead and instruct people on iTunes, Coco, because I know you mentioned.
Yes. Well, all you guys got to do is just, if you guys go on Apple iTunes for the podcast, you click your podcast and you type in LA Bachelor Pad, and you guys, there, you're going to appear Donelson Files. You just click download, and you guys can listen to my voice whenever you want to. So go ahead and do that.
And not only that, but you can even listen to her co-host as well. All right.
Mostly me,
Lauren,
but that's okay.
All right. Okay. The other question is, like I said, I wanted to kind of touch base with you on a few things. The latest development in Great Britain, because Brexit does also impact Ireland, where you're living. So kind of give us the latest. I know Boris is now the new prime minister. Where do we go from here?
Blah. Blah. Did I say it right, Lauren? Blah.
Yeah.
Did I?
I'm sorry. It's just it's like a joke. I'm sorry,
it is a joke. It's a joke here. I can't imagine over there.
Oh my God, it's like the spawn, It's like the spawn of the devil.
He is the devil. He's like the reincarnate. He is like the British, dead version of Donald Trump. He's like the Walking Dead.
No, when I was like, this can't be happening. I was laughing. I said, this can't be happening. No, really, right?
Yeah. He's like the Walking Dead.
No, it's like I thought. To me, it's like it's like a cartoon that came to life.
Right.
No, really, it's like a cartoon that came to life, and every time and this is the saddest part is when he came to Scotland, because I love Scotland so much. It's like my heart. I almost ended up going to school in Scotland. That was my original plan. And so when I saw him go, to go to Scotland for his first trip there, I was like, don't go to Scotland. Don't tarnish those people. Don't go there. Don't step foot on that, And it was just I still cannot believe. I'm just so, earlier when you said, in your lifetime, my lifetime, we never had this type of the massacre. We never saw these shootings. We never saw this type of, we never saw the level of what we're experiencing in our lives. And Tom, you have been saying this for a long time about certain things on the show. You've said this too. We've all said this in our lives. Yeah. But it seems like everything is so accelerated that we're seeing. Everything is so accelerated. That's why I've been thinking. It's such a height of everything. So I'm thinking, I remember Margaret Thatcher. There's always been this level of decorum about everything. And you kind of trust that. No matter what's going to happen in the world, you can always count on at least the governments to maintain a certain level of decorum to help us get through these events. Well, suddenly, that level of decorum is no longer there. And when that's not there, I really believe this, and with all my heart, when that level of decorum is not met, we, all of us, and I say we collectively as societies, but everybody at all levels, regardless of anybody's, say, station in life, and that's an old term, I feel like we all lose our footing. We lose our footing. We lose our footing because we feel like, all right, well, who do we look for? Who do we look up to? We need that. Even if we don't trust the political party in place, we need to know there are certain standards in place, and it's not there now. It's not there in Great Britain. It's not there in the United States, and people are lost. They really are, to a certain extent.
Well, I'm going to follow. Yeah, I'm going to follow up with that because I think you make because I've made this point once before. You're right. I've made this point repeatedly. And I once told Coco a while back, I really feel bad for it because this, in the United States, and I'm going to say in Europe as well, because when I start looking at Europe and what we see in comparison to what I grew up with, there's no doubt. We've seen, to me, a decline in the political class overall. I'm not going to use the word talent, but certainly with ideas, vision. An example would be, let's look at Great Britain. You may laugh at Boris Johnson, but I look at Jeremy Corbyn, and I keep asking myself, this guy is an outright anti. He's an anti. Corbyn. You got a major party, in which, quite frankly, you may have an anti-Semitic Marxist running the party. You didn't even see. The closest thing you saw in the '80s would have been Michael Foot in 1983 when he ran against Margaret Thatcher. That's about the closest you ever see. And and here's the other thing I find fascinating is in the United States we're not there yet. But I look at let's take Great Britain. You look at the last EU election. You literally saw the collapse of both the Conservative and the Labour Party. Who came in first? Brexit Party. Who came in second? The Liberal Democrats. And then you had the Scott Nationalist Party. In other words, people did not vote for the established party. You go, France is another example where, the established party that most people grew up with, the conservative or Gaullist party, the socialist, in 2017, they collapsed. They literally came in fourth and fifth. Who you had? You had Macron with his whatever, party he made up at the last moment. You had Marie Le Pen and her group. And number three with the Communist Party. What was, the defined Communist Party. Germany, the two major parties, are slipping in popularity. There was just a recent election where, Merkel's Conservative Party fell behind the far right in Germany. And so you're seeing across the board a collapse of the political process of the parties and what they're still. Because here in the United States, one of the aspects that came to play, people, we don't like to make. There are a lot of people say the two-party system, but the beauty of the two-party system is it forced candidates and to compromise. Once you got a president, you got a wide. You had not, you had different groups within your coalition. You had to please. You had to basically, it's always been said, yes, you have to go run close to the center, or however the center is defined. That's starting to disappear. Both, and certainly, I feel bad for Coco because she's joining a party at a time when it's slipping to the hard left, and even she herself has stated, if Ira Schultz is a
no, but I'd rather be hard left than far right. So
Me
you know
too.
what? I'm sorry. I'd rather be far left than
Absolutely.
like Tucker Carlson saying that white supremacy is a hoax. Come on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I'm going to put it this way.
There's no putting it this way, Tom. No.
No,
actually,
there's no putting it this way.
Actually, there is.
That.
No, I'm not going to defend Carlson, but I am going to say I look at the Democratic Party today, which, by the way, I stated in my book was happening 2 years ago. Namely, it's becoming the Socialist Party of America, and it's going to that left. Let me put it this way. As I say in the show,
rather be
when you got – when I say in the show, and I've kind of, discussed this, when you're to the left of Nordic politicians on what you want to do, I think you're pretty far left. Or about several months ago, one of the funniest things I saw was a former Swedish prime minister trolling Bernie Sanders being too far left. I do think there's, I would rather take a Donald Trump over a Bernie Sanders, and you two would disagree.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you, Tom, because I said something to you last August when I first came on your show, and I was very careful what I said to you, but because I wasn't really, I was not just because I was uncertain of what I was saying on the show, but I was hesitant because I'm careful what I say until I know what I'm going to say. But I said this to you, not as a warning, but as a suggestion. And this is what I said to you back the last August, almost a year. I said to you this, and I'm going to say it again now, that the decision you're going to make eventually as far as your political viewpoints is going to have to come down to this. It's either you're going to stand with your party out of a sense of, I have to stand with my party because this is my career and this is my belief system and that's what I have to do because this is what I've done all my life. Or you're going to have to finally come and say this isn't working, because essentially what's being done right now is wrong. You're going to have to make that determination. Wait, listen to I'm not done yet.
Go ahead.
Because what has happened, what essentially is what's happening in this country is wrong. It's wrong. And the people that are not going to stand up, this really is about this. It's about this. The ones that are going to do nothing, or the ones that are going to stand up and do something. And it's going to be written down in the history books. And it's going to be what you do for your family and the people, for your friends. And it's going to be hard because all your life you've done your career and what you've stood up for, and I understand that. But everyone's going to have to make a decision in their life. This is a very important moment for all of us.
No,
My family goes back 5 generations of Republicans. You understand? I understand this, but this is wrong.
Well, let me put it this way: you're right, but if you look at it from my perspective, you would I don't view it. I do view it in the same sense you do, but I'm going to put it in this category. But listen to me from this way. Here's what I've never seen before in the Democratic Party, and this is what I'm seeing. And I know Coco has denied this, and she'll continue to dispute me on this. But when I see people who I view, quite frankly, have turned to an anti-Semitic Marxist view, where just look. No, wait. And you listen. Here's something. Because you're looking. Just look at the proposals that have been placed out there. You're talking about people who are literally going to eliminate industries they don't like. You're looking at people who have taken an extreme.
Oh my God!
Okay.
You're so.
Let me tell you. Read the Green New Deal. It basically eliminates the fossil fuels. It basically eliminates a lot of different industry. If you look at some of these other proposals that they have put forth.
But what you're saying
we're not
is
we're talking complete.
Trump, you're willingly going to allow what the damage that's being done now because you have a fear of any changes that could occur to make things better. That's what you're saying.
No, they're not going to make things better because I know the historical record, and I've also seen the historical.
God, are you kidding me right now?
Oh, wait, let me ask you a question. Are you saying? I gotta say, I've made the point very clearly. These people have made proposals to the far left of what any Nordic politician would do. How far left do you need to go? How far do you need to go to restrict the freedom and liberty that we're going to lose as a result of it? We're not talking about Joe. We're basically not. We're talking not the Democratic Party of 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago. Barack Obama, 2008 version, he could not get the nomination.
Do not bring this. Oh my God. Okay.
Well, you tell me. Tell me.
You're race baiting, dude.
No, I'm not. I'm not doing that at all. I'm making the facts as they are. I'm laying out to you the facts as they are, and I've laid those facts out.
And how far right are you going to wait? And how far right are you going to go to remove all the rights that children and women have had over all these decades? Are you going to take away the abortion rights? Are you going to take away children's health care? Are you going to take away the food that elderly have been given when they can't go out to get their food, when they can't walk, when they can't get medication, which is what's being done right now? So are you going to go so far right to take away all the needs and all the social rights that we deserve to have? Because that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing.
Sorry,
you're going.
I'll let Coco finish up here because we're running close to time. I'll let the two of you finish up here.
And you're saved by the bell, Tom. You're saved
no,
by the
I'm
bell.
not. No, because the bottom line is that there are no proposal to eliminate Social Security. There are no proposals to eliminate welfare. There are no proposals. There are no proposals. Where's the proposal? Here's the thing.
We're going to die, so it's totally okay. Well, I'll just move to Ireland with you.
Yeah, all right. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
I'm moving to Ireland with Lauren.
Please, anytime.
We got 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left, and I can't give my position justice. But I will let.
That's a good cop-out, Tom.
All right, tell you what. Hold on just a second here.
Uh-huh.
Dr. Larry, you're on the line, right?
Oh, God.
I am.
All right. Can I take 5 minutes of your time?
Certainly. Better you than me.
All right, there. Okay. All right, there. Okay, now I'm going to. So there'll be no cop-out. Look. Okay, let's talk about the act. Okay, we have to be looking at actual proposals. We have to be looking at what's been said and what's been done and what's been accomplished. Let's talk about, for example, there have been no moves by Donald Trump, and if you ever look at his record, he's never even, he's made it very clear he's not going to change the Social Security system at this point. And any changes that have been recommended over the years have always been about reforming the system to keep it in place and keep it well funded. That's number one. So that's not going to be there. Number two, when you sit back and say the welfare state, we're not eliminating the welfare state. There's been actually no proposal, in fact, of anything. If you look back in the 1990s, when you look at the welfare compromises that were done between Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich, Republican Party, there were two things that came out of it. The Democratic Party said there's a limit to what we can do on the welfare side, and the Republicans said we will have a safety net. That's still in place. Nobody's even disrupted that. If you look at the tax bill that was passed, the middle class got their tax cuts, which I demonstrated. And by the way, interesting enough, his proposal had the highest tax rate proposed of any proposal, including Barack Obama's own bipartisan commission.
Tom, you forgot one thing, though. Tom, I have to tell you this.
What?
You forgot one thing. I lived in Palm Beach. I was in Mar-a-Lago. I dined in there. I met his people. I know Donald Trump. I was there with him. I had dinner there. I know what was said, and I know what he's going to do to Social Security. I know these things. I know how erratic he is. I know his mindset, and I know the people he associates with. I know better than most people. I told you this last summer.
Yeah,
I'm trying to explain something to you. I told the people that voted for him, my own friends, people that have doctorate degrees, okay? People are looking out for their own self-interest. So I know your heart, and I know you believe what you're saying, and I hope to God that someone counsels him to do the right thing. Let us all hope that. Let us go to bed tonight and believe the best.
Okay, I'm going to let, like I say, I'm going to let both you and Coco have the last word, but let me add one extra thing, because here's the other aspect that comes into play here. He has pushed and promoted and got passed the First Step Act dealing with prison reform. So, this is an act, and this was an act that's beginning the process of making sure that people's rights are protected, because we just had last week on the Democratic debate where we saw what happens with a certain prosecutor and how they play the game. We saw the fact that you had a state attorney general deny at least 1,000 people their evidence that would have kept them from going, that would have freed them. And as one, and I remember there was a law professor once said, the sad thing about Kamala Harris is not that she's unique, is she's the standard that others pretty much follow along. So I'm just saying, Donald Trump is a lot of things, erratic and everything in that aspects of it. But I'm telling you, as I just stated, there's not going to be this complete collapse of the welfare state. It's always going to be in place. We've accepted that. We've recognized that. There have been no proposals, and certainly by anybody on our side, to eliminate that. And I'm just saying, when you start talking about the elimination of industries, where you have people basically saying, we're going to get rid of industries we don't like. And the problem that you need to look at with an Alexandra Cortez and the rest of her squad, these are not typical Democrats of the past generation. These are true revolutionaries willing to take this to a level we've never seen before. That's my warning to you.
Is that like Benjamin Franklin? Da-da-da.
All right, I'm going to give you the last word. I'm going to give you the last word. I'll give Coco the last word, and then guess Larry.
That is my last word. That is my last
word.
All
right. Okay, Coco, you got anything else? You got anything else to add before I give the official intro to Dr. Larry?
Are you addressing me as a fellow conservative?
I didn't know. I didn't know if Coco had any additional words before I let you actually take over your own show.
Oh.
So, Coco, you got any last words? All right. In that case, we're going to, first of all, I want to thank Lauren. Lauren, before you go, tell everybody how they can keep in touch with you.
You know what, Tom? I'm going to leave my contact information on your website, okay? So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, that's where they can just go to your website. And thank you very much for this evening. I enjoyed myself as usual.
Here's the official intro.
When you hear that trumpet, you know it's the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network. I'm Dr. Larry Fedewa, and I am your host for the next hour. And tonight we're going to take on two somewhat separate but related topics. The first is some reactions to the Democrat debates that we have seen in the recent past, particularly in the last week. And the second, we are going to talk about these mass murders that have unfortunately captured our attention in the past few days and actually the last several years. So starting with the Democrat group of candidates for the presidency, if we thought that that Hillary, with all her baggage, was about as sorry a candidate as the Democrat Party could come up with, the current crop of aspirants is proving us wrong. This crop does not seem to have even a coherent message. They are angry, they fight each other, they see horrors everywhere, they are advocating pie in the sky, and they hate Donald Trump. And that's about it. Unless some superstar emerges from the shadows, or Mr. Trump blunders into a recession, it is hard to see much of a contest in 2020. Not that the Republicans haven't had their own streaks of weak candidates. One winner in 2 of the last 6 elections between 1992 and 2016 is not a great record. But this time, at least so far, it is difficult to take the people in the Democrat field seriously. For example, most want to eliminate fossil fuels in 10 years, even when there is no comparable substitute, when the entire world depends on fossil fuels for survival. Even their statement of the problem is out of date. No one can look at the violent weather we have been experiencing and doubt that the climate is changing. But when has it ever not changed? As far back as records go, there have been changes in the climate. What about the Ice Age? Yesterday, the scientists were telling us that there is global warming and the polar ice cap is melting. If that were true, battery-driven cars wouldn't be helping us much. The first thing to do would be to move all the seaside structures to higher ground. But how feasible is that? We see large numbers of people who won't even move their towns away from floodplains after being flooded out every other year. How are we going to move New York City or Los Angeles inland? Plus, more recent data are showing that the ice cap isn't melting anymore. Not only that, but after the Council of Rome scared us all in the 1970s with the idea that climate change was controlled by human carbon emissions, the more sober climatologists have begun to assert that human intervention is vastly overrated. True, air, water, and food pollution are dramatically affected by human waste. But the most of that damage in today's world is done by the developing nations, which were not even included in the Paris Accord, which every Democrat running for the presidency vows to reinstate. The Paris Accord was basically an agreement by which the USA would pay for as much of the world pollution as India and China wanted to clean up. Nothing we can do is going to control the weather, and that's just common sense. Another characteristic of our sophomoric class of presidential wannabes is that they have a hard time understanding facts which do not agree with their ideas. This is the case not only with climatology, but also with other positions they take. For example, they keep insisting that the Trump tax reduction benefited primarily the very wealthy, corporations and individuals. The recent data show clearly, however, that the tightening labor market is benefiting the lower skilled workers disproportionately, with half of the 7 million new jobs going to minority workers at an average of 8% increase in pay and the highest employment numbers in history. The enterprise zones are attracting billions of new investment dollars, and the property values are increasing by 20%. That's helpful especially to the more than half of that population who own their own homes. There is no question that the poorest areas of our country, both in the great cities and some rural areas, need attention. There is truly no excuse for the wealthiest country in the history of the world to tolerate homelessness, starvation, untreated illnesses, drug addiction, and subpar education. But talking about these problems is not going to solve them, nor are more federal programs going to solve these problems. The Great Society proved that. The Great Society programs made the problems worse, including the breakdown of the family structure in the American ghettos. The president doesn't use the most effective words, but he does more than talk. He acts. And actions still speak louder than words. And then there is education. To summarize the superficiality of the current ideas once over lightly, they want to give away college education while ignoring the K through 12. And what's wrong with this picture? First, only about 1/3 of Americans graduate from college, while 100% of Americans by law attend at least 10 years of lower education. Second, K-12 schools, especially in the poorer sections of our country, are fundamentally flawed in curriculum as well as teaching quality. They are singularly unsuccessful in preparing our children for earning a livelihood in this digital society. They are run by local governments for the benefit of administrators, guided by teachers' unions. Since these unions are instruments of the Democrat Party, reform is not on their political agenda. The most fundamental issue of today's post-secondary education is its cost. Since state and federal governments got seriously involved in higher education, their tuitions, fees, and lodging have skyrocketed. Most federal money has gone for buildings, and boy, have they ever built buildings. Since when did a college need an athletic field house more ornate than most professional facilities were a generation ago? What does that have to do with teaching math or history or business administration? The truth is that colleges are no more successful in preparing the 21st century workforce than are the K-12 schools, with a few exceptions in technology and engineering. The whole educational establishment is outdated, a hopelessly expensive boondoggle. Spending another $1 trillion on free tuition is not even close to a successful solution. And finally, there is health care. But health care, that's too big a topic for this week, so we're going to spend the whole program on that next week when we talk about free market possibilities for health care. We are listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network.
Having trouble with math or science homework? Call Rose Holman Institute of Technology's Homework Hotline, a free math and science tutoring service for Indiana students in grades 6 to 12. Call toll-free 1-877-ASK-ROSE from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday through Thursday. And a Rose Holman college student will help you with your math or science questions. The tutors are patient, smart, and pretty cool. Remember, it's a free service and a free call. That's 1-877-ASK-ROSE or visit askrose.org.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network. One of the really key issues, it seems to me, in this electoral session, this cycle, is one that the Democrat Party really has put their finger on, and that is the issue of the decline, really, of the middle class in American society. And by that, we're talking about the financial decline. And that, even though that is a subject that is very foreign, it seems, to the Republican Party, the Democrats really have a true issue here. Unfortunately, their answer is, as I have pointed out a number of times, there really are only three ways to solve that problem. One is through the trickle-down economics of the Reagan era, which frankly have never worked very well, and certainly have not worked for the American middle class in the last 35 years, since President Nixon dethroned the gold standard. The second way is for the government to confiscate most of the wealth that is being accumulated by the very rich, and then we ask the government to design and administer programs by which they will change the proportion of wealth that is held by the middle class compared to the very rich. And frankly, that goes against the entire way that the American society has developed over the past 200 years. And it really is because when you ask the government to do things, my own experience shows that's pretty much the way to really screw things up. It's not because that they don't have good intentions, although there's sometimes that is also suspect. It's because it's so hard for human beings to anticipate the various unexpected consequences of our actions. And the obvious example of that is the aid to dependent children problem or legislation or program that was enacted in the Johnson administration, which made it illegal for welfare dollars to be given to a household in which a man was actually an adult male was present. And as a result, in order to sustain the welfare society that had begun to develop during the Johnson administration. The men who were supposed to be the husbands and fathers of those folks were eliminated from being present in the home. You had a whole generation of single mothers who kept on being mothers even though they weren't married. And the men were given really no direction or guidance as to what in the world they're supposed to be doing if they're not taking care of their families. And we have a very fractured family structure, which is really has become a major factor in the financial welfare of many of the people in our society. All of this is because we cannot really expect that human beings are going to be able to be so wise and so productive that they can, in fact, anticipate all of the unforeseen consequences of their own actions and so the idea of giving them universal power over things like families turned out to be extremely difficult and very, very troublesome. So what's left? What's left has to be a way for us to develop our capital, our free society, our free market society, in which people can, in fact, continue to have personal freedom, but they need the freedom to be able to marry and to be able to have children and to be able to stay with their children. And they have to have the freedom to be able to better themselves by attending good, strong educational and training programs that are not being run for the benefit of the teachers, but are being run for the benefit of the students. And they have the right, they have to have the freedom to be able to send their children to the kinds of schools that will in fact help them. And it's been proven in every instance where school choice or parental school choice has been tried, that people in all classes of society know where the best schools are, and they try to advocate them, but because of financial and transportation and other factors, they can't make it. So they end up being poorly educated, not trained for the kinds of jobs that really do exist. And by the way, this is also true of higher education in many cases. And so we end up with a situation in which, if we give all the money to the federal government, or even to the federal and state governments, we end up with situations that are not going to do us much good. So there has to be another way, and it's that way that we are trying to find with our entrepreneurial culture. We have one of the main freedoms that we still have, and we must continue to exercise, is the freedom to start our own business and to take the risks and take the rewards that come from trying that and trying it successfully, or even if we fail to learn what we did wrong, that we can do it better in the future. And in this regard, I guess one of my favorite programs in the entire television world is called Shark Tank, in which we have the entrepreneurial spirit of America is alive and well, in which ordinary are able to come up with tremendous ideas for businesses. And because we have the ability of people who do have wealth and do have resources to sponsor and promote those people that have the ideas. We have the only really truly entrepreneurial society in the history of the world, and this is something that we have to really continue to try to use to our greater advantage, and let's keep the government out of it. The government really is not going to help us. What we really need is people who have the conscience and the desire to try to live a better life themselves, and when they do, to try to support the people coming along behind them. And frankly, to do all of this, to have a better education system would surely help. So this is the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network.
Your mother-in-law just dropped in. It's dinner time, and she looks hungry. Time for a quick dinner. Think fast. Think eggs, like an omelet with tomatoes and cheese. Quick, easy, delicious. So, she loves dinner, compliments your creativity, and finally admits you're not a shameless social climber who stole her baby boy away. All thanks to the incredible edible egg. For other quick dinner, lunch, and snack ideas, visit aeb.org. The incredible edible egg. The American Egg Board.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network. My podcast can be heard on the Bachelor Pad Network, and that is www.bachelor, BATCHELOR, Pad Network, and under Dr. Larry's show, and you can hear all the rest of our programs of the rest of the programs on the network, also podcast on the same website. You will find some of my columns on the in the section on the essays, and my own work is also on my website, www.drlarryonline.com. So now I'd like to change the subject and talk about the mass murders in the United States that we've been experiencing here in the past weekend, and actually for the last really 30 years. I think when we had that first shooting in Colorado, and then shortly after that at Virginia Tech, we were introduced to a whole, and then of course Oklahoma City, which was the greatest, the most devastating domestic terror experience that we had, and the only one that has been even worse was 9/11. And we've been having increasing number and ferocity, I guess, of those kinds of incidents ever since, including in 2019. So let's take a look at some of the issues that are involved in that. The first thing to remember is that the person guilty of mass murders or domestic terrorism is the shooter, no one else. The wild accusations against the president are totally irrational and slanderous. He is no more responsible for the Texas shooting than Bernie Sanders or Cory Booker or Beto O'Rourke are for the Dayton shooter. We've had these mass murders now for long before President Trump ever became president. Now, the statements like the calls for gun laws actually result from the sense of helplessness that we all feel when faced with incidents like these. The fact is that no one who is bent on murdering people, that anyone who is bent on murdering people will always find a weapon. If not a gun, then a sword, an explosive, a car, or a truck, or an avalanche, or a club. There are many weapons available for people who are serious about murdering other people. So the real question is, can we stop these copycat killings? Maybe. The first thing that comes to mind is the successful measures which have been taken to mitigate the damage of such attacks. Two immediately come to mind, namely the police and the hospital trauma units. The police departments of El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, have obviously learned from the mistakes of the Florida squad during the school shootings last year. The El Paso officers were able to disarm and arrest the shooter without a shot fired. In Dayton, they arrived less than a minute after the alarm and shot the killer almost immediately after arrival. The Dayton hospitals had developed a high-capacity trauma center and were able to treat the entire group of wounded and injured patients, which came in numbers from the raid. So these are people that have looked at what has happened in the past and tried to anticipate that if it ever happened here, we would have to do certain things, and that is an attitude that I'm afraid we are going to have to maintain for the next foreseeable future, because it's no matter what we do, and there are things we can do, it's still there is no fail-safe solution to the problem or the possibility of some crazy person taking up some kind of a weapon and going and trying to kill people. But the underlying issue really is prevention. Knee-jerk calls for confiscating all guns from the civilian population are neither feasible, useful, or effective in preventing these incidents. For one thing, disarming the good guys leaves the bad guys with the guns. And if you need proof of that assertion, just look at the places where they virtually outlawed guns, such as Washington, D.C., Chicago, London, and so on. The only guns are in the hands of the outlaws. Now, but there are gun laws that we do have, and they need to be enforced. We have, for example, the so-called assault weapons have really been outlawed now for a generation, but they're still around. And why are they around? Because we have not had the social desire and the social agreement that they should in fact be taken off the market, and that people should not be able to. Who needs a cylinder that has 100 rounds of ammunition in it? If you're in the military, there's a reason for that. But if you're not going to be in a revolution, why would you need such a weapon? But the fact is that we have a lot of gun restrictions on the books right now, and we do need. The first thing we need to do is start reviewing and then reinforcing those types of laws. The big thing everybody's talking about now are background checks, and background checks certainly seem reasonable. For example, we have to register in order to drive a car, but here we have something a little different, because if we're talking about registering everybody who has a gun, that would tell us who has guns. But the purpose of it is also to try to prohibit people from getting or purchasing guns who have certain human restrictions, whether it be mental or emotional problems, history of such things, or whether it be various physical limitations. And when you start getting into that, now we're talking about, here's a guy who's in the business and he's got a hardware store and he also sells guns, and somebody comes in and says, okay, I want to buy a gun. Now he says, okay, let me look at the national database, and who. That's something that really takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to try to maintain a current database of, well, what might easily turn out to be 100 million different names and addresses. And that I don't think has been thoroughly thought through either. But now we have, how is that guy who's selling that gun going to make the decision that he shouldn't sell the gun to somebody standing there with the money unless he knows that this person has been outlawed from having a gun? That has to be in that database someplace. And if you're going to get into that sort of restriction, then you've got to have the issue about mental illness and other kinds of physical debilitation that are supposed to be covered by confidentiality with your doctor. And it's not really supposed to be common knowledge of anybody that wants to find out what your capacity or your eligibility to have a gun is, and how is that supposed to be on your? Is that supposed to be on your record? Does that mean that all medical and rehab people are supposed to make entries into your personal record that are going to tell you whether or not you can have a gun? There are a lot of privacy issues that have to be worked out here, and you're listening to the Dr. Larry Show. We're going to step aside for a second.
It's the two megastars summer mashup, the awesome iPhone on the Rockstar Metro PCS network. Get the iPhone you've always wanted for $0, so you can jam without limits.
It's a hit. Get an iPhone SE on us when you switch. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax and $10 activation fee. Requires port in of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or on Metro PCS in past 90 days to an unlimited LTE plan. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the BachelorPad Radio Network. You can also dial in if you wish to comment or ask a question for 646-929-0130. 646-929-0130. We're talking about trying to prevent this terrible sin against nature in which we have people that are randomly going out with weapons to just kill people. And we've had too much of this. Sometimes they have a reason in their own mind. They're terrorists, and they're trying to promote some kind of a political agenda. But in other cases, they're simply angry people that want to just kill anybody that they see, or kill some kinds of people, like, for example, teachers at a school. So been talking. We were also talking about this whole idea of registering for a handgun or for any gun, and we're kind of concerned about some of the practical considerations that go into such a thing. For example, if there are just a lot of guns, how are we going to find out who has all the guns that are there? If I'm have inherited a shotgun, as I did from my father when he died, am I supposed to run down to the local police station and register that I have a shotgun now? Or if let's suppose it's not a shotgun, but it's some kind of a military weapon, an assault weapon of one of the ones that are outlawed. I suppose if I were aware of it and thinking about it and had any intention of ever using it or passing it on to my own children, I should go and register that weapon. But let's face it, supposing I didn't want to do that, or I didn't think of doing it, or I was against the whole idea of registering weapons, I wouldn't do it. And how many hundreds, millions of weapons like that are there that are just privately held and all have been and will continue to be probably? And then the other thing is, supposing I inherit a weapon and I decide I want to make some money on it, and so I sell it on the black market. That's where a lot of the guns that are now in the hands of criminals come from. So it's not an easy thing to just say, well, let's have background checks. It's going to take a lot of analysis and a lot of discussion and also a lot of money, because we're talking about a lot of people who are going to have to be covered in any such a registry. And then we're also going to have to talk about access. Who has access to it? Is it anybody who is in the gun business? They have access to all of these names and I presume addresses, probably social security numbers. I'm not saying don't do it, but I am saying we sure need to think about it some, because we've got a lot of different possible problems that are associated with that sort of a universal conscription of sorts. There's also the issue of there are people that say, well, if we're going to disarm the civilian population, this is surely the best first step. Let's find out where every gun is, so that if we get into if we ever have the need, we can in fact confiscate all the guns and put them in the hands of the government, and then we have a potential tyranny. I don't think that's a very realistic problem at the moment, but it is one that some people are really afraid of. So the other there's a little different issue now, and that is why, when the law enforcement and the FBI, particularly in the case of the one of those Florida shooters, and in fact the local police in other cases, have been notified by relatives or by teachers or by someone that a particular individual has been making threats, or that their social media entries are very destructive or even self-destructive, and that people have in fact been trying to warn the authorities, but the authorities haven't done anything about it. And I think this is fundamentally because one of the foundations of our legal system has been innocent until proven guilty. And it's very difficult for, in fact, our entire law enforcement structure depends upon waiting until a crime is actually committed before somebody can, before they can take action. They can't go around deciding that there's a possibility that John Doe might kill somebody, or that this angry woman who just got jilted by some guy is maybe going to go and get a gun and kill somebody, or get a butcher knife. We can't have a society in which we have the law enforcement going around trying to arrest people that might commit some kind of a crime. And so we've taken the official posture throughout the entire legal framework of our country that we wait until someone does something wrong before we accuse them of it and try to prosecute and punish them. So for us to try to get on the preventative side of this, where we have potential criminals or potential mass murderers or potential terrorists, and that we are then going to take some action to punish them or at least disarm them, that is a very difficult thing for us to work into our system. We really don't have a mechanism by which we can easily start that kind of a action, and frankly, it's very dangerous, because if we get the wrong people going around making such judgments of who might be dangerous, that's a very a Gestapo sort of thing that we've all seen in the movies, but we sure wouldn't like to have down the street from us. So that's another very practical consideration that we have to take, that we have to deal with if we're going to come up with a preventative situation or a preventative plan of action relative to the mass murder phobia that we're trying to overcome. So it's a very spotty very spotty territory out there, with a lot of little traps in it and a lot of big traps. One of the things that it seemed, I was on another radio show the other night in Baltimore, and we were talking about police and the relationships that they used to have with the population, at least in the densely populated cities, by walking the beat, and literally you had police who walked walked their patrols, and did so began to know all the people. They some of these guys were talking about playing basketball with the police when they were kids, and we were just trying to think, well, maybe if the police had a more congenial and more visible presence in our cities, that not only would they be able to perhaps diffuse some of the practical criminal problems, but also they would, it seemed like, would have a chance at trying to develop some of these problem cases by knowing the parents and knowing the teachers and knowing the neighborhood in general. So we were all kind of taking as we talked, we came more and more to the conclusion that it would be a very helpful thing on a lot of different levels for the police to be going back to walking the routes. And of course, we were saying, well, would they be welcome, and how would they be treated? We'll talk more about that in a minute. For the moment, we'll step aside, and you've been listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network.
It's the 2 Megastars Summer Mashup, the awesome iPhone, on the Rockstar Metro PCS Network. Get the iPhone you've always wanted for $0, so you can jam without limit.
It's a hit. Get an iPhone SE on us when you switch. Metro PCS. Coverage not available in some areas, plus sales tax and $10 activation fee. Requires port in of number not currently active on T-Mobile network or on Metro PCS in past 90 days to an unlimited LTE plan. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
You're listening to the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelor Pad Radio Network, and we're talking about preventing these incidents of essentially mass murder that we've been experiencing for the last generation now, and really have not figured out as a nation. We have not really figured out how to stop this. In fact, if anything, it seems like it's getting a little bit more frequent. It just seems that we our whole society has to get a lot more oriented toward trying to take care of each other. Back in the day when you were in a neighborhood, everybody sort of looked out in a way. They kind of looked out for each other. I remember when I was a kid, we had a collie dog who was a watchdog extraordinaire, and he had we used to keep him in the backyard, and he had his little doghouse in there. And he got to the point, and there was a bus stop about a half a block away. He got to the point where he could tell by listening to whoever got off of that bus whether they had a familiar step or not. And if they were unfamiliar people, he'd start barking, and he would bark until somebody paid attention, or whoever it was got in a house. And we actually took that attitude, I think, as a whole society, as a whole neighborhood. We had all kinds of people that lived in the houses. They were not that. It was pretty much I guess you would call a lower middle class neighborhood at the time. But everybody kind of felt like we had something in common, something with each other. I don't know that we do that anymore. And you can say it's because we all have too much television, and we all have too many cars, and we don't get out and talk to each other very much. I don't know all the answers. But it does seem like the answer to this problem has to do with casting a wider net of trust and cooperation among our people to be able to try to identify who the problem people are in our society, and to do it before they go out and start killing people. And that, it seems to me, is the only way in which we're going to be able to ameliorate our situation as we confront it in these days. I know a lot of people want simple answers, and they think it's a political problem, and that is frankly unrealistic and frankly not very productive. And to have people running around trying to accuse other people of being a reason why we have people that are crazy and people that are so alienated in our society. Those problems have always been there, and they'll be there for probably as long as they're human beings. The question is, can we as a community try to identify and try to ameliorate those issues before they become serious? And I think it's possible to do that to some extent. I also think that we're probably not going to solve this problem in its entirety, certainly in our own lifetime. I mean, we've had these kinds of social rebels ever since certainly the beginning of our own country, and frankly throughout history. If you look if you want to see the mass murderers and the crazy people. Historically, take a look at the old westerns that we used to watch. You know, there was always a bad guy, and this is a guy that was trying to hurt everybody else, or at least he was trying to scheme everybody else. We've always had the bad actors, and we've always tried to have the old saying about if you want to, you can curse the darkness or you can light one candle. And it seems like we need to have some people lighting candles these days, and stop cursing the darkness, because the cursing of the darkness is simply making certain people in our society darker and more concerned about the things that we're complaining about than they are aware of the good things that are happening and that are all around us also. So I think that we really need to have a more positive and a more constructive attitude toward this problem and a lot of our other problems. If we think everything is dark and gloomy, and that we are victims of all of the forces that can be aligned against us, then we don't have much hope. But without hope, there is really no salvation. Because if we don't have hope, we aren't going to work toward trying to solve our problems. And if we don't solve them, nobody's going to solve them. It's up to us. It's up to us individually. It's up to us and our families, and it's up to us to try to see the brighter side of life, and see that the people that cast the dark shadows amongst the sunlight of our future and our days that are not the people that we want to concentrate on. We need to identify them, and we can find that because they cast a dark shadow in the sunlight. So we ask that if you're listening tonight, please try to go to bed tonight after you've identified a half a dozen good things, because tomorrow morning you can get up and do something good. And if there are people about us for whom we can't, whom we cannot convince that they are worthwhile and that they have something to offer to all of us, then we really need to find who those people are, and we need to try to prop them up. And if we can't do that, maybe we do need to talk to somebody in law enforcement and try to figure out how to solve the problem of the person who might do something evil before they do it. So we are now at the point of signing off on this August evening, and we have a good wish for everybody. Let's try to be happy, and let's try to keep these sad and lonely and shadowed people from dominating our lives. This is the Dr. Larry Show on the Bachelorpad Radio Network, and we're saying good evening and God bless everybody.
till we both forget. Telling each other we're the ones. We would make love at the drop of a hat. Remember that? Yeah. I remember you and me, closest any two can be. Now we're strangers in the night, awkward in the dark. Oh baby, do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay together? Hey, if you do, then let's please make some new memories. When you take somebody for your own, it can't survive on history alone. Yeah. Meet me at the hotel motel, so we got a room at home. Go to a place that we don't know so well. It'd be nice, add a little spice, try some new seduction. Show each other how, give each other new instructions on what makes us feel good now. I just wanna make you feel good now. Feel good, don't it? Come on. Do you wanna make it better? Wanna make it right? Come on. Do you wanna stay together? I meant when I said it. And it's easier to run away than to look for what would make you stay. Do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay together? If you do, then let's please make some new memories. Do you wanna make it better? Do you wanna stay together? If you do, then let's please make some new memories. Do you wanna make it better? Wanna stay together? If you do,